Hi, this is Scott Garibay, and today I'm going to be talking about kind of the state of tabletop role-playing games today, and specifically Evil Hat Games and the way they produce their tabletop role-playing games, and specifically because of the trouble they had in 2018. And one change that I think they could make that would significantly improve their chances in 2019 of having a strong financial year. All right, so let's get into it. All right, so 2018 was really a very interesting year in tabletop role-playing games. Dungeons & Dragons continues to knock it out of the park. Dungeons & Dragons is like reaping the harvest they've sown with Dungeons & Dragons 5th edition. They've had a tremendous year, okay? Now, the rest of the tabletop role-playing game industry overall, I think one of the things we've seen is we've seen growth in the number of small publishers out there, and they're making a lot of great, exciting games. We've seen significant growth in quality in international tabletop role-playing games coming to the U.S., right? Mutant Year Zero, the Conan tabletop role-playing game, most of the stuff coming out of Modifius. There's a few, Simbaroom is a really good example, so we've seen some really solid growth even in the international space. But there were definitely some companies that struggled in 2018. And one of the companies that struggled in 2018 was Evil Hat Games, the creators of the Fate tabletop role-playing game. They made Fate Core and Fate Accelerated. And Fred Hicks is their I think he's their CEO, but he's the central main driver behind that company. He's essentially the largest part in creative lead. He's pulled all that together, okay? Now, Evil Hat Games is a really interesting company. Fate Core and Fate Accelerated are a system series. Their rule system is so strong that it's spawned well over 20, 30 games now, at least, right? And they make, Fate Core and Fate Accelerated are a big part of what makes Evil Hat, and it's the lion's share of what they do, okay? Now, they do have a licensed property, which is the Dresden Files, which, I think some people would be, now, that doesn't have a movie or a television show. The television show was canceled, but it is a successful series of books. There are a lot of people who are really big fans of that license, and having that license is a big deal. Licenses are not easy to get, and licenses are not easy to maintain, right? But, and in addition to that, just this year, they also got Blades in the Dark, which I think is one of the very top tabletop role-playing games, rules-wise, and even the world is very exciting as well. But rules-wise, it's one of the best tabletop role-playing games that's ever been written. It's one of the most innovative tabletop role-playing games. And John Harper, the specific author, has done a tremendous job with Blades in the Dark. And I think it's really exciting that Evil Hat Games gave Blades in the Dark a shot. However, in Q4 of this year, Fred Hicks sent out and he posted a post on their website and said that they had a rough year financially. They were going to be letting some staff go, right? Now, Evil Hat Games is a kind of a brick and mortars. It's one of the few tabletop role-playing games that actually is structured around still having a physical building. They have headquarters, and they to my knowledge, and they're one of the largest tabletop role-playing games. They're not a small. This isn't a garage band shop, right? They make a lot of games. They have licensed property. They get some of the newest, most innovative games on within the hobby. It's not a small shop. They hire multiple artists. They hire multiple writers, right? All of that, right? But this year was rough, and not only did Fred Hicks say they were doing layoffs, but he also swept the board with a whole bunch of projects and said, all these projects are on hiatus. We're not promising delivery on these. They didn't. I think Fred Hicks was very, very careful not to leave anybody in the lurch. I don't think they left anybody where there was money paid and you weren't getting the product that you had gotten. But everything where there was a plan to make it, but no money had been received, all of it was canceled. Except to my knowledge, Dresden Files and Blades in the Dark. I think both of those are being actively supported. But almost every other project that Fate is doing, also Fate Core and Fate Accelerated, those are continue to be supported. But everything else was, we'll see. We'll see if we're going to make it or continue to make it. Excuse me. So that's important, to understand how that's going, right? So, basically we all saw Evil Hat said this year it wasn't a great year. We have to make some serious changes, and what we expected to happen didn't happen, right? So here's my 2 cents on what they should change. So what should they change? When you have a rough year like that, you can't continue to do business the way you did, right? I have some suggestions, but I have one overall, I think the largest thing they need to do, and this is my primary suggestion, is stop making Worlds of Fate and stop making source books, okay? So a good example of this I'm pretty sure this year, 2018, Fate brought out 2 specific tabletop role-playing games. One was a British stalwarts alien invasion game. So it was British stalwarts fighting alien invasion, okay? That was the concept of the game, right? There was also another game that they brought out, which was essentially a fantasy Hawaiian setting, which is very unusual, right? Now, what they did with both of these came out as Worlds of Fate books, right? So it was like, if you own Fate Core or Fate Accelerated, you can run, this British Stalwarts Alien Invasion game, and you can run the Fantasy Hawaiian game, right? And that, to me, is a mistake. And I think it's shocking to me how many companies are still doing this. And I understand why it's done. The Sourcebook is an incredible tradition, has an incredibly long history as a tradition within tabletop role-playing games. It seems to me that and I actually just had this conversation with the gentleman who makes Green Delta, one of the Cthulhu books. And the reality is, I'm one of the few people on internet that talks about, on YouTube, that talks about this. Sourcebooks are a serious problem in the industry. The industry keeps making them because of tradition, right? But the reality is, what they don't understand is, with both of those games, with the British Stalwart Alien Invasion game and with the Fantasy Hawaiian game, by the way, they both had different names. I'm just telling you the concept of the game there. Basically, what they were saying was, if you have Fate Core and Fate Accelerated, you can bring this into your world and you can run these settings as a world of Fate, right? Now, my issue is there was a ton of time, effort, and struggle that was invested into those 2 source books, right? But once they hit the market, all they were source books for Fate Core and Fate Accelerated. It is chopping those products off at the knees and making sure that they fall, okay? Both of those were brand new, fully formed tabletop role-playing games. If literally 30 pages had been added to each one of them and they were just released as a core rule book, right? Then you could say, listen, here's a freestanding tabletop role-playing game, play it, right? And you don't even have to mention that it runs on Fate, right? A perfect example of this is Forbidden Lands. I know about the Forbidden Lands tabletop role-playing game. It's brand new. It just came out this last month, and it's a new take on classic fantasy tabletop role-playing game. It's kind of got a different slant to it, right? I don't know what rule system it runs on, but I'm highly interested in the game, and I've been reading about the game, and I'm like, okay, this is on my get list. I don't know what rule system it runs on, right? And the reason why is it's a new core rule book, right? And so I'm saying, hey, this is a new game, I can play it, right? And it doesn't matter to me what rule system it runs on, right? I'll give it a shot because it's a new tabletop role-playing game. But when you make a source book, the first thing on the back of the cover is it says, this is for Fate Core, Fate Accelerated. You are telling them, if you're not one of the tiny sliver of people on this earth who own Fate Core and Fate Accelerated, go jump in a lake, because this book ain't for you, right? And so that's my point, is Sourcebooks are saying, if you don't have the core rule book, walk on. You're not my customer, right? And there's just no reason in the world to do this with all these really cool Fate Worlds of Adventure, right? Every single one of them with additional 30 pages of material can be a freestanding tabletop role-playing game and can be announced to the world as saying, here's one book, you buy it, you buy it on Monday, and you are playing on Saturday, period, end of sentence, right? Whereas if you make it as a source book, what you do is you say, hey, you tiny sliver of people who are already our customers, this book is for you. And if you don't have Fate Core or Fate Accelerated, go jump in a lake, because this ain't for you, right? By the way, I'm 100% aware that Fate Core and Fate Accelerated are both available free PDF anytime you want them, right? But the reality is, you're saying, listen, this book isn't approachable until you have read this other book, right? So even though Fate Core and Fate Accelerated are free money-wise, they are not free time-wise. You are so Fate Core and Fate Accelerated then become an obstacle to every single Fate World of Adventure they create, right? Now I'm saying use the Fate rules, but put them into the book and create the book as one freestanding book. And I think this is absolutely critical. And I think it's one of the reasons why Evil Hat Games really struggled this year, right? It didn't have a good year, right? And so I think it's absolutely critical to go down this road and actually correct this problem that exists. That's my take. I'm really curious what you think. Please consider liking and subscribing, and have a wonderful day.